accept the. Oh, okay. All right. Cool. Samantha, can you hear me?
Hey, Sakib. Yeah, I can hear you. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? I don't know how
Well,
you deal with this stuff.
well, yeah. I mean, it's all kind of crazy, and I gotta say, I really understand how people can hear a lot of stuff that's fleeting and try and fill in the gaps with fragmented
Hmm.
information, with gossip, and it's normal, and people want to understand, so that's cool. I don't fault
Yes.
anyone for that. So I just say, let's bust it out.
Yes, yes. And I said the same thing, and I'm like, because we were talking on WhatsApp or whatever, and I'm like, yo, I don't know how Samantha deals with this stuff because you told me this stuff's been happening to you since 2017, and it is wild. It is. I don't know how you deal with that. So.
You got you. I mean, I also kind of understand. So in a way, although I think a lot of trolls are nuts and they're angry, I'm not. I
Mhm,
try not to be angry because I have to remember that they don't understand, and it seems kind of natural. There are a lot of people that wanted this fairy tale to work. There were a lot of
mhm,
people that hinged their identity, their sense of comfort on the idea that for the and I get it, and it's cool, and it's not even about race, but for the whole world, it was like
mhm,
this symbolic union of socioeconomic status and skin
mhm,
color. So for a lot of people, it's like, wow, we're finally people are just people. This royal wedding represents that, but they took those basic concepts so far as to hinge
mhm,
their own seeming identity, place in the world on the survival of that relationship as it was placed in the media. In other words, not looking at their own places in the world, but looking at this royal wedding as symbolic of that. So if there's any
mhm.
wrench in the works, or there's anyone who speaks out against what is going on related to that, I think people like become really irrationally overreactive and take it personally, and that's not the way
Oh,
it is. I mean, Harry and Meghan are their own people. So if the sid,
mhm,
God forbid, the sister comes out and she says, "Well, this is not true. That's not true. This is not true," which I did. Oh, she must be really
mhm.
horrible. Let's throw some dirt on her. So yeah.
Exactly.
So trolls and other
Uh,
people. So no. So
Let me. I was because I was about to do this like in a much prepared way because I wanted to prepare and stuff. So I was looking into your profile, your history, and whatever. I wanted to ask you. You have a degree in counseling and mental health and that kind of stuff, and
and
mental health became cool now. So was it your calling? Like, did you had a calling for that, like counseling and mental health and that kind of stuff?
Well, it's a double degree. It's in mental health counseling and vocational rehabilitation counseling, which deals with
Mm-hmm,
a wide variety of conditions and disabilities in life, and how that impacts vocation, how that impacts helping individuals find a goodness of fit between their skills, interests, and abilities and the needs of an employer related to
mm-hmm,
disability. So and I did that largely because at one point I wanted to be an attorney, but I didn't want to have my head in briefcases when the bell rang and my daughter was getting out of school. So I thought, you know what? That would just be too much
mm-hmm,
stress on her. I want to be available when she's out of school during the day, and she's home. So
mm-hmm,
I'll choose mental health counseling because it has social utility, but it won't be as
mm-hmm.
demanding as being an attorney. So that's why I made that choice.
And I was watching your interview with Dan Wooten. I don't like the guy, but that interview was fantastic. I think you did an interview. I saw on YouTube. I think it was a day ago, right?
Mhm.
Was it?
I'm sorry, I did one with P. Dina and who else? I've done a couple of them.
Okay. Now I saw one on JB News. It was uploaded just one day ago with Dan Wooten.
Yeah, yeah,
Do you remember?
yeah, I do.
Oh yeah, that was yeah, that was pretty cool. That was pretty cool. You made very valid. I think you guys were watching South Park clips from South Park and stuff,
Oh
right?
yeah, yeah. That was
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
interesting.
Okay. Let's address the elephant in the room. So people have been, making some claims about that you abused your daughter or whatever. I'll give you the floor to you. Wherever you wanna go.
Okay, and that's totally cool. I open it up to questions too. So for the record,
Mm-hmm.
in
Mm-hmm.
2000, this happened. This was over 6 years ago now. My daughter
Mm-hmm.
was 16 at the time, and when I
Mm-hmm.
found out that a friendship of hers with a 32-year-old guy involved
Mm-hmm.
talking and texting every minute of the day, and my boyfriend found this guy on top of her in the family den, I threatened to have him
Mm-hmm.
arrested. I cut off their texting and communication. She gave me an
Mm-hmm.
ultimatum: Mark leaves or I leave. And I said, that's not the way we do things. Well, then the next day, I got a restraining order saying I'd been abusive, even though she'd been with me her whole life, was in the best Montessori schools, made good grades, was beautiful, well liked, never an incident, never an issue, because I kind of let her control things. I knew that she was an honor student and I really loved her. So I thought I'll let her make her own decisions about who she wants to associate with. And when they said they were just friends, I believed it naively. So it turned out to be a lot more than that. And when, the one time in her life when she couldn't have her way and I just cut that off abruptly, all hell broke loose.
Oh wow. Oh wow. You mentioned you showed me some documents as well where the
Yeah.
I think the court you went to court and it was dismissed as well.
Well, yeah,
Would you like to talk? Go
yeah,
ahead. Go
actually,
ahead. Go ahead.
yeah,
Go
because
ahead.
there's a lot of confusion out there about that, and people are like twisting things and not understanding things. So let me also say, for public record, um, so first of all, there's an agency known as CYFD. They are preliminary, and if they investigate something, they go to domestic violence court. Domestic violence court will hear everything, look at evidence, and they'll either move forward with criminal charges or not. Okay. So apparently, Noel and my crazy fake war hero ex-husband, out of wanting revenge because he only got supervised visitation of her when she was small, because in his previous marriage he kicked his wife in a doorway and she fell over on the two toddler boys. He was ordered that he couldn't see his kids until they reached majority, so he always had a vendetta going. So they got together because I moved the boyfriend out of the way by cutting off their communication and filed these bogus charges. Well, CYFD had their opportunity in domestic violence court with Special Commissioner Mark Benford. I gave you that document and the case number.
Yes.
And P. Dina has the whole transcript. And so Commissioner Benford, when Crystal Davis of CYFD, a new, overly zealous, inexperienced field agent, had the opportunity on court transcript, audible in the courtroom, to articulate what happened, Commissioner Benford said, "So, Crystal Davis, what happened?" And she goes, well, it must have happened in the past. And he said, "What happened in the past?" Now, that's on court transcript, and P. Dina has it. She couldn't articulate a single incident. And my daughter had interviewed with court clinician Jasmine Story, and so, that being said, number one, kids who are abused present with signs of distress in their face. They don't sit and tell about horrible things with no affect. Secondly, if someone is abused, any practitioner, especially in an agency like CYFD, can articulate what happened. The child was burned with an iron, thrown off a bridge. There is something articulable that happened. Well, they could cite nothing. There was no evidence, and they couldn't even simply state what happened. So that,
Yes, obviously.
so
And it's so funny because the thing is you are confined to a wheelchair, right?
right. And Commissioner Benford also noted that. He said, "Miss Davis, are you aware that Samantha can't get out of her wheelchair?" Now, I've heard, someone posted, yeah, people in wheelchairs scratch, bite, kick. Those are in caregiver relationships where you're dealing with somebody who is not only cognitively dysfunctioning, but has a lot of physical problems, and maybe where a caregiver was lifting them or something happened and they have cognitive dysfunction. That's not the case with me. I have two master's degrees. I'm cognitively high functioning. I don't kick, scratch, or bite. And furthermore, let's talk about disparity of force and strength. I can't push a manual wheelchair. My daughter was not my caregiver. There would be no way I could scratch, kick, or bite. Number one, I wouldn't want to. She's my daughter. But
Right.
more than that, if someone in a wheelchair is coming at you and they're being aggressive, do you think you could jump on a couch, go out the door, get out of their way? In
Mhm,
other words, it's not
mhm.
possible in the context for that to occur. And if I tried to stand, I would crumble to the ground like a dish rag. Okay, so
Exactly.
my daughter
Hmm.
could break
Go
my
ahead.
neck. My daughter could break my neck with the flick of her fingers, but that's an extreme scenario. The bottom line is it never happened. It couldn't happen. And there was
Hmm.
no evidence of it. And so I say, like, if someone accuses you of being a rapist, Saqib, they
Hmm.
better goddamn
Yes.
have some evidence, DNA evidence, and
Exactly.
certainly they would be able to articulate what took place. So,
Exactly. And
so
in your case, that's why I posted that tweet because I'm like, it doesn't make sense. And your daughter, she is, I think she is 5'5". I think could be right.
5'6" probably by now, about
Five
145.
six.
And even in that yeah,
Yes.
in that picture, there is a disparity of force issue. Her strength against mine, I she could easily overpower me. But the fact remains, my daughter, was never punished by me. I don't believe in spanking. I took away toys and cell phone privileges, and that's the way it is. I mean, you have to have some repercussions for to condition behavior, and kids have to have boundaries. Um, so
Hmm.
she was never really a problem. And so I thought taking away the cell phone and privileges was the best way to deal with it. Um, so after,
Yeah. Hmm.
so with this court hearing, Commissioner Benford also had Jasmine Story, court clinician, in. Pdina has that on the court transcript. It's also on CD-ROM available. And
Hmm.
Jasmine's Story had said, well, one of the problems we have is that Noelle's gross exaggerations are not congruent with her affect, meaning she'd sit and like say horrible things. I think she said, my mom grabbed me by the arm and threw me into the wall. Now, you tell me in an electric wheelchair, if I can't stand, how I am going to pick up even a heavy object and throw it into a wall, or a light object. It's not physically possible. And she sat there with no expression on her face, just like she's reading a Snow White fairy tale, saying this stuff. So Jasmine Story
Hmm.
said, we can't say that she's not safe in her mother's home, but we do think she will attack her mother again, which she did in the media. And she also didn't tell Jasmine's Story that she was pissed off that I cut off her
Hmm.
communication with this guy. She told Jasmine's Story
Hmm.
that she didn't like women, but she didn't qualify
Hmm.
that by, she had a best friend who hurt her in school and who stopped communicating with her because she went to summer camp and met a boy. So Noelle was out of the picture. Long story short, the things that my daughter told Jasmine's Story made no sense, and Jasmine's Story could tell that she was lying. Coupled with
Exactly.
no evidence
Yeah.
whatsoever. Yeah.
Exactly. Where are the pictures? If someone threw you off, on the wall or whatever, you will have some injuries. You should be able to articulate what happened. And
Well,
as you mentioned, yes,
yeah.
go ahead.
Well, aside from parents being primary agents of socialization, children are in school all day. She was in the best Montessori and magnet schools. And if a child is thrown into a wall and their arm is broken, guess what? A teacher is going to call authorities right away, and it's going to turn into an arrest.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
it's like,
Um.
and so the teachers that interacted with her and saw her every day, beautiful, perfectly groomed, beautiful smile, never broken teeth, never all these things that she alleged. I think she said once, my mother hit me in the mouth and broke my teeth. Well, darling, your dental records show beautiful teeth your whole life. And I think your teachers would have made a note of that. Uh, you know, And so but the thing is, these allegations only came out at when she was 16, when I cut off that communication with the guy. And what's really interesting is that 2 months before that, like if I was so terrible her whole life, she and
Mhm.
this 32-year-old guy worked on my film promotion teaser because
Yes.
I taught her how to do forensic makeup. So if I'm so horrible, why is she and my ex-husband and this 32-year-old guy working on my film promo teaser? 2 months before those allegations. Give me a break. It just doesn't fly. If your mother's horrible, you don't work on her film
Mhm.
with her. You don't, it's just, and certainly my daughter had a cell phone every day of her life. I bought her the best cell phones. So if I was horrible, do you think
Mhm.
she'd be calling people and calling authorities and calling everybody all those years in my
Mhm.
care with no incident? It does, no, doesn't work.
Yeah, yeah, that because when you were giving me the documents and I was just looking through it, and when you told me a 32-year-old guy and she's 16, I'm like, she did the absolute right thing, right? And cutting off cell phone, that's
Well,
not abuse because
well,
if you look at the intention, yes, I go ahead, Samantha, go ahead.
Well, one of the trolls said, "Well, then, Sam, why didn't you have this guy arrested?" Well, here's what happened with that. I had had surgery, my
Mhm.
ribs were in bandages, and we had a hearing to press statutory rape charges.
Mhm.
An unseasoned APD officer said, "Samantha, there's nothing you can do. She's at the age of consent." Well, I believed
Mhm.
that erroneously. And then when Commissioner Benford, when I told him that, on the side after we were done in the courtroom, he said, "You know what? Let me look up that statute because of the disparity in their age, this guy and her. Like if the guy was 18, it wouldn't have been, she
Mhm.
would have been at the age of consent. But because he was 32 and she was only 16, she was not at the age of consent under New Mexico statute. I could have had him charged with statutory rape, but I already blew it by not showing up because I had had surgery. My ribs were in bandages. It was pouring rain. And I
Mhm.
believed that cop. And I believed it would be
Mhm.
futile because the cop told me, she said, "Oh, Noelle's at the age of consent. There's nothing you can do about this." And I thought, wow, then my hands are tied because I'll lose in the hearing anyway and he won't be charged. Well, that cop was wrong about the statute, and I could have gotten this guy charged with statutory rape.
Mm-hmm. So a couple of minutes ago, I shared a tweet with you that Sarah Data made.
Yeah,
Can you address that?
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Was it a document?
Yes.
Okay.
Give me 1 second. Let me find it. It was something to the effect of I appreciate the American judicial system for properly handling abusive mothers like Samantha. Yes, take care of previous child like Noel away from abused mothers. And then she attached hearing officer report and notice of filing, and then she said she made an arrow to the number 4 point. Father testified that the mother and her boyfriend are abusive to the child and that child has lived with him since May. Father produced a certified letter from children, youth, and families, mothers,
Right.
yeah, all that kind of stuff.
So
Yes, so what?
again, that's the CYFD letter. And let me also remind you, Crystal Davis was overly zealous, had no experience, and could not articulate a single incident. But she left that letter lingering in the database that trolls somehow got a hold of. And so first of all, my ex-husband, I think, tampered with that letter because that letter is dated May 14th, and
Mm-hmm.
on transcript in the courtroom, Crystal Davis told Commissioner Benford, she said, when he said, well, before he asked her what happened, he said, well, so what happened? And she said, well, she said, on May 15th, we got our first phone call to investigate a priority one. Well, how can you conclude an investigation a day before you even got your first phone call on May 15th? So that
Oh,
letter,
wow.
the lines on that letter appeared to be typed, the font and typeset seemed to be set higher and smaller than the rest of the letter. And so it didn't
Mm-hmm.
make sense. So something was tampered with, or Crystal Davis wanted to cover her ass because she was wrong. She couldn't articulate an incident, and she left that in the database.
Mm-hmm.
And let me also ask you this. in court,
Mm-hmm.
in domestic violence court, if someone is abusive, first of all, CYFD is not the authority. They couldn't articulate a single incident, and they were being overhauled by the DOJ because they were putting kids in the hands of abusive parents and going after innocent parents. That's on record. They were so screwed up, they were having DOJ problems. But do you
Mm-hmm.
think that if someone's abusive and you have your chance in court, you articulate it, then the courts levy criminal sanctions because there's evidence enough to move forward? So that CYFD letter went nowhere. And also, I found that Sarah Data had a letter out there that said something about Samantha agreed to this with no objection. Well, what I agreed to after the hearing of
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Benford and Jasmine's story, I said, yeah, I agreed that Noelle could live with her dad as long as she finishes high school. So Scott passed something over the desk, and I assumed it was the dismissal with prejudice and the court clinician's testimony, Jasmine's story, and that there was no finding and it had
Mm-hmm.
no merit. So there was no one named Pat ever in our hearing. The court clinician was Jasmine's story. And I thought, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing wrong with that information from the court clinician and domestic violence dismissal. Sure, enter it into record because nothing happened. So
Exactly.
apparently, like there's some confound there, and there appears to be tampering because I guarantee if in that
Mm-hmm.
hearing with Commissioner Benford in domestic violence court, that if there was
Mm-hmm.
anything that warranted sanctioning, it would have moved forward to at least a jury and a hearing for abuse and then a conviction. Well, it never went anywhere, dismissed with prejudice. And he put on there no emotional or physical abuse. And I wanted to point out to you, some troll said, Samantha tried to get a restraining order against Scott, and that's what was dismissed. No, because on transcript in the domestic violence court, Commissioner Benford noted that this is reverse captioned. Scott tried to get
Mm-hmm.
an order of protection against me, and it was dismissed with prejudice. He saw no
Mm-hmm.
emotional or physical abuse. It went nowhere. I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't charged. Dead in the water, no merit. And court clinician Jasmine's story, the advisement was that the family engaged in family counseling. So if you're abusive, they don't just say
Mm-hmm.
dismiss with prejudice and go to counseling and work out your disagreements, right? But that was the
Exactly.
disposition of it.
Yes. So this document is tampered with, and she's falsifying the information. I think Samantha, you need to take these people to court as well.
Well,
I've seen crazy people. Yeah. Go
I
ahead.
mean, I gotta say, I really, you love your kids, but when your kids decide to abuse you and decide to bully you because they don't get their own way, and I mean, she's had plenty of time now. She should have come forward and
Mm-hmm.
apologized. And oh, let me talk about. I want to point to you guys that ridiculous video in the Daily Mail article. They need to take that down, but they said, oh, well, it was an honest interview, whatever. It doesn't even matter to me anymore. If you look at Rosalind, my mother, who my father divorced in the 70s because she was a bitter alcoholic and barfly, I will not
Mm-hmm.
retract that statement. And she was always bitter
Mm-hmm.
against me because I favored my father, and she called me a snob because I was educated and she wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't get along. I thought her lifestyle was kind of raunchy, and that being said, my mother and I did not get along, and that's part of the reason my father divorced her was because of the kind of woman she is. So she sat in there and she
Yeah.
said, no, but wait,
Mm-hmm.
this is what's funny about that video. So I thought, wow, there's Rosalind. She's got a big opportunity to articulate why Samantha is abusive. And you know what she said? Watch her. It's laughable. She sat there like she's in some kind of stupor and says, and Samantha said, get that effing shoe off the floor. And I'm like, what is she talking about? First of all, I don't talk like that. A shoe would not be,
Mm-hmm.
worthy of like, get that shoe off. If somebody is abused and all you've got, given your opportunity on camera, is that she said, get that effing shoe off the floor. That's all. You
Mm-hmm.
mean that's all you got?
Yeah. Exactly.
That's the best example
Yeah.
you've got
Yeah.
of abuse. Okay, so I was
Mm-hmm.
like, wow, this is ridiculous. And then Noelle said, my mother said, if it's not bleeding, and it's not broken. It's not abused. Well, let me tell you where she got that from. There was an incident once when I took some bridle horses away from her. She was 7 or 8 at the time. I took horses, and like she yelled out the window, like, my mom's trying to kill me, like, just being like ridiculous and crazy and
Yes.
dramatic.
Yes.
So the cop
Mm-hmm.
came to the house, and they're like, there was not a hair harmed on her head, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I was sitting there, and I told the cop I had her bridle horses on my desk because I grabbed them and I turned away from her, and I said, "You can have these back when your behavior changes." And the
Mm-hmm.
cop asked Noelle, he said, "Why would you do this to your mom?" And she goes, "I don't know." And he said, "I'll tell you what, if you do this again, I'm going to take you to jail, not your mother." And the cop looked at me and he
Oh.
said, do you do anything for her behavior? I said, "Yeah, I take toys away." And he said, "It's okay to spank. I spank my kids." And I said, "No, I don't agree with that. I don't." He said, "If there's not a mark
Mm-hmm.
on a child, I don't agree with that." So Noelle overheard that and repeated, "If it's not bloody and it's not broken, it's not abuse." But the funny thing is, children sadly are seriously abused. They have bruises, they have iron and burn marks, they are horribly
Mm-hmm.
abused. And I did police ride-alongs for 2 years, so I know what that looks like. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Kids who are abused are not always in beautiful hair. Can teachers them all day notice these things? They're going to suffer. They have marks on them. They are disheveled. The bottom line is that an issue, and authorities would have called. So for someone who's always been beautiful and perfect care to, like, all
Mm-hmm.
of a sudden say she was didn't get away with a 32-year guy, I feel
Yeah.
the press charge against her now that she's an adult.
Uh,
But you know what? Because she's my
Samantha,
daughter.
let me interrupt you a little bit because you're cutting off a little bit. Maybe your connection is your voice is breaking. Um,
Okay,
yeah, I
so
can hear you now.
let me
Yes.
move to another area. But because she's my daughter,
Yes.
and in spite of everything, I love her. I am hoping that she will mature, get counseling
Mm-hmm.
at some point if she hasn't, and come to me and
Mm-hmm.
apologize and be ready to, "Wow, I really screwed up. I'm so sorry. Let's see what we can do this week." But I didn't want to drag her about it. There was also some stuff going on. There was an article online. I also found when she moved out, she was into like Nazi and devil worship and getting letters at school trying to recruit people into the Nazi party. There was so much going on that I didn't know about, and that was all a byproduct, the offshoot of her friend, I guess, rejecting her, and that she was bitter about it. So she was at school, and I didn't believe this. I went to a parent teacher meeting one time. What's going on?
Samantha, you're cutting off again. You're cutting off again. Um, if
Is that
see if
better?
yes, yes,
Okay.
that's better. Yes, yes.
Okay. So I went to a parent teacher meeting one day at her high school, and keep in mind
Mm-hmm.
again, her BFF friend that she also, I found out, had a crush on, was rejecting her. All these things going on that she wasn't telling me about. And teenagers go through a lot of changes, but I didn't know that along with this girl at school that she was also having an issue with this 32-year-old guy who I thought was only her friend. But the parent teacher meeting revealed to me that, contrary to what she told me, Noelle told me that she was being bullied at school one day when she came home from school. And I said, "Well, what's wrong?" And she said, "The girls at school are calling me fat." And that didn't make sense because she wasn't fat. So I felt like she was deflecting. Well, anyway, the teachers in that parent teacher meeting told me that they were actually afraid of her, that she was like giving them a vibe and making evil eyes at them in the classroom. And I looked at them like, "You're all crazy. Why would you suggest that my daughter is like this? My daughter is not like this." Like I was defending her. And I felt so clueless as the mom who had been through counseling school. Like I didn't read the signs. Like why? I thought she and I had good communication, but she was involved in devil worship outside of school and outside of our household, listening to
Oh
music
wow.
like Slayer, which is Slayer music is terrifying if you
Yes,
listen to the lyrics.
yes,
And
yes.
I thought,
So she was
yeah,
into her
so
rebellious stuff, right? Rebellion and stuff like that, right?
well, and what's weird about that is that as a counselor, I mean, I would think that kids who need a sense of empowerment would engage in that stuff, but I let her run the household. I thought, wow, how much more power could she have? I let her, you start off with your kids when they're younger, you give them like three choices and you let them start making better choices. You don't want to make all their choices for them because they need to learn to make good choices, right? So gradually, as you see them making responsible choices, you let them make more choices. Well, she was an honor student, so I thought, I don't, I'll just let her make her choices. And I trusted her, wholeheartedly. And when she
Mm.
said when she said she was only friends with this 32-year-old guy, I believed that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, just so much going on. And I think, still, even when they get to be older teenagers, you have to have some boundaries because being a parent who is completely lenient can almost be as bad as being, it's not neglectful, but if you have a child who's going to take it far left field, it's almost as bad not giving them
Yes,
boundaries.
and
But
I was telling you the same thing that you in such a tough spot because she is your child and then she's spreading those rumors. So you are, in a very tough spot because you're getting attacked for it and you cannot do anything because she's your child and you love her, your child. So you are in a very, very tough spot. And I don't know how you're dealing with that, but it's sad. It's sad.
well, it's
Go
sad.
ahead.
I mean, no, it's sad because I've lost a lot of time with her, but that's she's made her choices. And unfortunately, if she'll do that to me, she'll have other relationships in her life where she's not being honest and where she's retaliating anytime she doesn't get her way. And that can have reciprocal consequences as she gets older, even in work relationships. So I think I'm hoping that she's able to work that out, or maybe she has by now. And it's really sad because I loved her more than anything, and I don't get to have a relationship
Um,
with her, and she doesn't have me either. So
yeah. Samantha, when was the last time you talked to her? Like when was the last point of like contact or whatever?
it was 2016. I had and she also said something in an interview. She said my mom pulled me out of school to go to the swap meet. Well, there's just one problem with that. The swap meet's on the weekend. I was very adamant that because she was an A student, that she finished school, but because of her social problems with her best friend and with high school not transitioning well, I felt it would be better that she thrive in like a young adult environment, like a community college, so we could get her into the film program. So I went to APS, the public schools, and I signed paperwork allowing her to withdraw from school provided we go enroll her in the community college, which we did, and get her in the film program where she would thrive as an adult. And, I thought she was smart enough to do that. So to say, oh, my mom pulled me out of school, no, I went and I allowed you to pull out of high school because you wanted to go to community college early to get in the film program. So, but she didn't tell anybody that part. And she also didn't tell anyone that the only reason I allowed her to live with her dad at 16, almost 17, was if she finished high school. And if she finished school, like the community college program, got her GED and went to the community college, which was the plan. So I was
Mm-hmm.
doing all this stuff, not knowing that she's behind my back, then in that video and everything else, telling people that I pulled her out of school because I didn't want to drive her. I'm like, what? There's proof from Albuquerque Public Schools that we pulled you out of school. And she sat in a meeting with me. The administrator said, are you sure you want to do this, Noelle? Noelle said yes. And I said, because she's so intelligent, I think the film program and early community college being around older peers would be better for her because then she's not subject to peer pressure, whatever her friends were putting her through, whatever she was feeling rejected for. Let's get her
Mm-hmm.
around adults and get her focused on education. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what we did. That's what we did. And she went to community college. I don't know how much of it she's ever completed, but
Right.
I honored her
Right.
wishes.
Samantha, so when did this all allegations and these claims came in public? Like when this started, coming into public, all these false allegations against you, when this started making rounds? Like what year?
It it happened around the time of all of the negative PR around the wedding, because
Hmm.
I guess Rosalind and Noel figured that they could get their 5 minutes of revenge. Rosalind wanted it because she found out that I'd called her a hillbilly. Noel said, I guess Noelle took that back to her because I disagreed with her lifestyle. So they both got together. Let's get revenge against Samantha. And it's just, yeah, it's crazy. If you are upset with someone, you don't lie and
Hmm.
call them abusive. And so they took an opportunity in the Daily Mail interview to do that. But
Hmm.
if you watch that interview and you watch their eyes and their body language and what's actually being said, it's ridiculous. Again, you know, you Rosalind had an opportunity to describe how I'm abusive, and all she could say was, Samantha said, get that effing shoe off the floor. Well, I didn't even allow people to swear around my daughter, so that was baloney. But if someone's abusive and that's all you got to say, that's a joke. Because
Exactly.
most most parents say, get that yadity yadity out of the backyard now. I mean, that's not abusive.
And
You know what I
in
mean?
in the message, one of the message you said, before making these crazy allegations, they worked on your teaser, the movie you were doing 2 months before.
That's
You made
that,
some points.
that's right. And I had a director in Santa Fe, and I had
Hmm.
I had a film teaser in pre-production at that time, so I was doing the promo. Well, Scott worked on the promo as an armorer, which is the guy in charge of firearms, because we took an area in Albuquerque. Mark, could you be quiet, please? Thanks. We took a couple of streets in Albuquerque where we shot this, and actually fired a lot of rounds that had not real ammunition in them, but dummy rounds. But still, they fire like regular weapons. So I had Scott on the set as an armorer, and I taught Noelle how to do forensic makeup. It's a film called Angel's Redemption. And
Yes.
what's funny about that is the 32-year-old guy even worked on that promo holding the boom, the sound boom, the mic. So that was two
Oh
months
wow.
before the allegation. That's 2 months before the allegations, and when I cut off their communication. So if I'm abusive her whole life, Scott and Noelle wouldn't have worked on my film promo, and I have plenty of photographs of that. If you hate your mother and she's abusive, you're not going to volunteer to work on her film promo and have fun, right?
Is that the picture you sent me as well, where a guy is holding a camera or something? Is that the guy?
Yeah, that's my film
Oh.
teaser, and someone named Raul Hio, an actor who was in a movie with Mel Gibson, Apocalypto, was the lead character in
Hmm.
my promo. But the film has since been moved to Ireland, and I've had a director attached since 2011. So the
Um.
whole point
Yes. Go ahead.
the whole point of that is two
Hmm.
months for these allegations, right?
Hmm.
They both worked on my film teaser, and actually the guy did too. So I trusted that they
Hmm.
were only friends because they weren't acting physical in front of me or anybody else. I believed it, but nobody was saying Samantha's abusive then. And if Samantha's so abusive and horrible, everybody's not going to get together and work on her film teaser.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, that makes perfectly sense. Perfect sense. Samantha, so because I think in the one of the interviews I was watching, I don't know which interview was it. So you were involved in media in some capacity, like before all this happened.
Yeah, I
Were you?
worked in yeah, I mean when I was 18, I had gone through broadcasting school, and I was interested in it my whole life, radio and broadcasting, because I think it has a lot of social utility, although
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's very ethical anymore. But yeah,
Oh yeah.
so for everyone who said, "Oh, Samantha's only doing this now because her sister is marrying Prince Harry." No, I've done this my whole life, folks. And I did it because I grew up with a television dad. And when you grow up you dabble, you find creative things that you like to do. It's just part of the course. But it's to, at my age now, I'm 58, to say Samantha only did this when she met Harry. No, I had a film in pre-production, and actually a film that was written in 2011, long
Mm-hmm.
before Meghan ever met Harry.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I worked in radio on and off throughout my life. So yeah, it is what it is.
Let me ask you, because it's incredible, and I need to ask you. So you've went through these crazy scenarios with your kids. You went through your health stuff as well. I was reading on your you had your financial situation as well. How do you still keep going? Like, what do you do?
Well, it's hard to be human, and you can do the best you can do, but you can't control the free will and others going left field. Like for that, I'll just say, look at what Meghan has done to our father. He gave her everything.
Hmm.
Look at what Harry's done to his family and his dad after Charles gave him everything. You can build your kids and give them everything, but that doesn't mean they're all always going to use the tools you put in their toolbox and make the best choices. And for related or temptation of some outside influence, they can still go left field, but you can't crumble when that happens. You have to keep it in perspective and say, and they around, apologize, or they won't. You can't get shake about it because it's not
Samantha, you're cutting off. You're cutting off again. Samantha, you're cutting off again.
okay. So, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now. I can hear you
Okay. So when your kids do something like that, I mean, you do the best you can, and you want the best for them, and you hope that they come around, but you can't get bent out of shape about it because you still have a life to live, and you have to keep things in perspective.
Exactly. Okay, I'll come to zealous and other stuff as well. Let me is does anybody has any questions for Samantha? Keep it to this topic, so I want this to be focused space. Anybody has any questions? Nika, Sergio, JT, Lana, Mutely, any questions? You
Um,
guys
well,
go ahead,
I don't
Nika.
really have a question. I mean, I don't know. I don't
Hmm.
hate Meghan Markle or Harry. I don't like them. I don't hate them. I mean, and that's just a recent feeling for me because I didn't really follow them. I didn't care. But because they constantly get thrown in our face for like months and months now, I'm like, oh, I'm so over that shit. How do you cope knowing that your family's so torn apart because of all these lies? Do you ever like envision that maybe after all the court and everything like that, that maybe you Samantha and Megan could sit down and maybe hash things out, or you and Noelle, or
Um, I certainly think, because I love Noelle, I certainly think that will happen with Noelle when she's ready. But that's hard, when a child lies like that and is so horrible. It's hard to for her probably to face that guilt and to fess up and be brave enough to admit it. And she would probably worry that I would reject her, which is not the case. I'm always open to her, but I want her to be accountable. And I think similarly with Meg, especially for my dad, there was no reason for her to treat him like that other than hiding her own lies. And the world, this is not my word against her. The world has seen a list of lies that were told and debunked. The education, the embassy, none of that ever happened. And it was all, people say, I'll just say quickly, so why don't you guys just let her do her own thing? Because when she's doing her own thing and it's discrediting my father after all of his blood, sweat, and tears and discrediting our family, you have to set the record straight and say, that's not true. This is true. That's not true. This is true. And in terms of coming back together, when you're dealing with someone and there have been mental health professional assertions out there that I believe are credible, suggesting that narcissism or malignant narcissism are involved and that she reportedly meets DSM criteria for that. The likelihood of developing empathy, remorse, and shame and getting back together and being on the same page and saying, what can we do moving forward as a family to make things right, is not likely on the grounds that there is seemingly no empathy, remorse, or shame. And she's had hundreds of opportunities, if that were possible or likely, to engage in that. In other words, you guys have all seen us out there, extending olive branches, and people thought, oh, they're just trying to suck up for money. No, we're trying to tell the truth and say, hey, this is the truth, but we want to hear from you. My dad was always out there saying, I want to hear from my daughter. Well, she's
Um,
had opportunity. She's had opportunities to have a meeting of the minds and come back as a family if she was able or wanted that. So I don't think
and,
that's like
and she's not doing her thing. She's throwing people under the bus and then using her position to, make herself look better. Example is her dad, Samantha's case, and different other people. So she's throwing people under the bus, and they cannot stay silent because they have to correct the record. Yeah, yeah, true, very true.
so.
Go
Oh,
ahead,
and
Sergio. Go ahead, Samantha. Go ahead, Samantha.
no, and I mean, you guys were probably all out there, like, and I had heard people going, why don't the Markle family just STFU, like, be quiet? We weren't out there, oh, pick me, do an interview because we want to make money. That's not the way it goes. Most of those interviews do not pay. And secondly, when we see PR out there writing fake stories, calling my dad a deadbeat dad, calling me a jealous old hag, saying I was abusive, saying I was a cat killer, or saying, I don't know, whatever they were saying. There was even an article out there that said I hired a voodoo priestess in Haiti and I was seen in Haiti in my wheelchair. Excuse me, I don't levitate, never been to Haiti. It's probably not wheelchair accessible. And I don't practice voodoo. So when you see articles, like however crazy they are, you have to come out and say, no, that's a lie. This is true. She did not get grants and scholarships. She never worked for the embassy. And all of those lies out there are to our discredit, in that they make it falsely look like she's got more credibility and that we're lying. When clearly she didn't pass the exam for the embassy. She did
Hmm.
a 5-week study program that was not merit based, that my father paid for, and any student who could afford it could go in Buenos Aires. And Uncle Mike threw in a letter of recommendation. Now, he worked for the embassy and retired after 40 years. So he only met Meg once when she was a baby and decided to do a favor to dad and throw in a letter of recommendation. The point is, a 5-week study program, not even an internship, not paid, does not equate with working for the embassy, as she told Rachel Ray and Craig Ferguson on national television. And so people say, well, why would you guys come out? Just let her go on and do her thing. Because when she lies and says she worked for the embassy and she didn't, it makes us all look like we're, deranged for saying dad gave her everything or saying she didn't, when we know that's not true. And we have not only, I believe, I think we have a moral obligation to say this is true, that's not true, this is true, that's not true. And a lot of you don't know that at times I've also defended her. Like when people say she's 45 or she's this or she's that, I'll come out
Hmm.
and say, no, that's not true, that's true, that's not true. That it's just, it is what it is. But I'm not going to let somebody be out there lying to spin a narrative, and people
Exactly.
can sort it out and look. I always say, look for evidence. Look
Exactly.
for evidence.
Yes, exactly. The receipts. Sergio, you had your hand first. Go ahead. I'll come back to you, Nika. Go ahead, Sergio.
Well, Samantha, hello, Samantha, by the way. I just want to say that from a European perspective, when listening to your story, it is about getting your truth out there and getting the truth known. And so when I comment on your stuff quite a lot, I can't stop. So I just wanted you to know that it is shown when we hear your story. We hear your story as is, and we know it's to get into the truth, get into the bottom, and that's it. That's all the input I had on that.
Okay. Thank you, Sergio.
Well,
Go
thank
ahead.
you.
Yeah, Sarah. Nika, go ahead.
All right. I'm not sure if this was from your brother or your father, but there was a comment out there saying, don't leave Megan alone with the kids. Now, was there something that happened when you guys were younger? Did she do something with like children? Was she mean spirited? Do you have any
No,
knowledge of that, of what he was playing?
no, no. I don't believe that. I don't know. I don't know why my brother would say that. I disagree with that. But I will say, in terms of what's going on now, treating both sides of the family, the royals lying about everybody, everything that's going on now is like not healthy behavior in front of and with your children. So, but in terms of, so that doesn't seem like a healthy situation right now, in my opinion, but I'm not there. For my brother to say that, no, I would never say that she shouldn't be around small children, because when he said that, all of these other things that are going on now weren't occurring yet. So I think that was a little far fetched. And so again, here's the point. I will always point out what's true and what's not. And if there's a lie out there about my sister, I'll defend it. I don't like her, but I'm not going to say something is true that's not if it's negative about her just for saying it.
Hmm.
I truly
Okay.
respect you on that. I truly respect your stance on it, and thank you for taking your time to be open and answer our questions that we have of you.
Oh,
No,
yeah.
thanks for no, you guys, thanks for asking. It's really important because between social media and fake news and people can get heated. We're in an emotional world. The world is, being human is tough. So people can easily react to what they don't understand. I think the best way is to get it out there and sort it out, look at evidence and just kind of put the pieces of the puzzle together. So it's cool. I appreciate the questions.
Oh, no worries. Thank you, Samantha, again. Let's come back to this zealous lady. What's going on with this? Because she came to me 4 months ago and she said, "Oh, I'm in this battle with Samantha. I didn't know nothing about your story. I didn't know anything." So I asked for the receipts. I said, okay, if you're gonna
Mhm.
make the claims, and I'm gonna ask for receipts. She said, my lawyer has all the screenshots and stuff like that. I'm like, okay, grab them and send it to me. If you can't give it to me, it's not going on my feed. After that, she ran away. She never. I was messaging her,
Well,
hey, where are the receipts? She never came back. So if you
yeah.
can,
Well, so let
yes.
me let me tell you, I could dump, and you guys have watched her. For people who have watched her page, this person has been harassing me, putting pictures of my face in a dartboard and a target behind bullet shattered glass, along with another Bell audio file for years since 2017. And so that being said, I did get a 2-year stalking injunction against her. She said she guessed my social security number. You don't guess a social security number. She was sharing it online and encouraging people to report me as not being disabled to the Social Security Administration and encouraging them to call and harass Social Security, sharing my address, sharing screenshots of the last 4 digits of my phone number. She's been a stalker harassing me for years. I got a 2-year injunction against her. She couldn't even look me in the eye in the courtroom. And now I'm trying to get it made permanent, and maybe press criminal charges against her. But I've been so involved legally with my lawyer and this case with my sister. And it's hard in a wheelchair. But, I guess one thing at a time. But that being said, I sent you an official
Yep, I saw
copy
it.
of the it's a
Hmm.
2-year stalking injunction, and that judge issued a 2-year injunction based on a lot of evidence. I set 5 ring binders down on his desk showing JPEG images of her threats, her sharing, personal information, photoshopping it. Like she is so set on villainizing me that she photoshops and twists little corners of a document and magnifies it and says some rubbish to like try and make it official. And I'm like, what is this psychopath talking about? So, but when I say I can dump boxes of screenshots of stuff, it's like a psycho fatal attraction. If I can dump this stuff on the living room floor, there would be enough to wallpaper the courthouse with. She does this around the clock, and I've only lately I've been reporting her, and so have a lot of people because she doesn't stop. And on Twitter, she says, "I will not stop." Well, yeah,
Hmm.
because the law says you will, because what you're doing constitutes harassment.
Hmm.
You're a catfish, you're a stalker, and you don't get to do this to people on the internet.
So Samantha, what is her like motive? Like, did you know this person? What is going on? Like, is she a psycho?
No,
She came out of
no.
nowhere?
She seemed to come out of nowhere in 2016, 17, officially when she started an account called Point Five Media Group, at Kai Native. And the point 0.5 meant the half sister. So at that time, Her whole goal was to bring down the half sister. So I thought she
Ooh.
was paid. She was paid. So she started enmeshing herself in every area of my life, like combing databases, getting my school degrees, contacting my schools, contacting neighbors. And I'm like, wow, this person's not a journalist. She has no, under the law, she has no legitimate purpose for contacting my colleges, contacting schools. And she's out there telling people my master's degrees are fake. Well,
Wow.
first of all, I've got all my transcripts, but what a nut job. Like, why does she need to tell people my degrees are fake? Why is she contacting my universities, my neighbors? And then on Twitter, she would mention my neighbors' names and she'd go, what about this person, Samantha? Oh, does 21836 sound familiar, Samantha, when I moved? So she's, excuse me, so she's posting pictures of my house, even when I lived in Virginia, and my address, as if to taunt me and say, I know your address, Samantha. Does 21836 sound familiar? Does 815 Shadow Drive sound familiar? I'm like, who is this nut job out there, like taunting me about my address every time I move? So it was like a psycho obsession, and she needs to be stopped.
Yeah, like because she came so strong in the DMs. I'm like, okay, I don't know much about Samantha. This was like 4 months ago, so I was researching Boozy, and I'm like, I don't know about Samantha Markle. I don't know what you're talking about. And if you're gonna make some claims, you better bring the receipts. And
Well,
when I
the
yeah,
the
go
the
ahead.
the Chris Boozy thing is great. I mean, we found out that there was a lot going on behind a paywall. There are receipts for that, but someone named Jock Thumbs or someone in England in 2019 sent out a tweet. I don't know if it was to Valentine Lowe or to somebody, but he said, "Don't kid yourself. Doria paid Princess and Pearls to hire social media trolls to attack Samantha and her dad." So I got a screenshot of that and I thought, how do I get a hold of this person and know how he knows this? But so I thought a lot of these trolls were paid. And now that I'm seeing squatties out there going, hey, squatties, your quarterly paychecks should be in your bank account by now. I thought, aha, so some of them are being paid. What's up with that?
So who do you think is funding all of this? That can be a speculation because we don't have the proof. Who do you think
Right.
is behind it?
Well, everyone says that Harry and Meghan fund the Sussex Squad. That's, I think that's salient now. But I don't know. I haven't seen those paychecks, but I think there's enough spoken about it. And for these people, let's face it, the world is hard nowadays. People have bills to pay. How can these people afford to be keyboard warriors all day long and sit at home and do this and harass people unless they have some kind of funding? I don't know. It's like, don't you have a job? Don't you have a life? Don't you have families? To sit and harass people around the clock, I wonder how that's financially possible.
Exactly. And when Nate covered when Nate put out your interview and he posted a link to Twitter, she came out like blasting, oh, Nate, you lost all your credibility and stuff. I'm like, what's wrong? Because I want to hear both sides of the story and then I'll make a decision. Because at that time, I wasn't aware of your story. I was only aware what Meghan Markle was putting out and the Oprah interview and stuff like that. So I just said, let the other sister talk and she can present her evidence and then we can decide. This is we should be able to hear both sides. So she lost
Well,
her
and
mind. Yes, go ahead.
yeah, and here's the thing too. Like, if you don't like somebody and you don't agree with them, and even if you really don't like them a lot, like even if it's egregious, you don't have a legal right to contact everyone they do business with, their colleagues, everyone they talk to on social media, and mass include them in tweets in an attempt to defame that person, no matter what you have. You don't, that's called harassment under the law. And so I've noticed she'll tweet at Tucker Carlson, at Dan at GB News. If she, even in a fake account, if she goes in and sees who I'm talking to, she'll spam everybody horrible things about me to try and convince everyone that, oh, I'm a horrible person. That's psychotic. And it takes a lot of time and energy to sit and obsess and do that. So I think she needs mental counseling.
Yeah, she's probably a cluster B, chick. So you mentioned because we were talking and you mentioned that one of your account was hacked. I think you presented me with the screenshot as well. That happened too, right, Samantha?
Well, several of my accounts were hacked like over the last 4 years. It was really weird. I didn't know how to secure phones, my iPhones and my devices. I didn't know that you have to go in and you have to seal off permissions and you have to make sure that you, in Twitter, that you lock off reset passwords so nobody can reset your password. And I didn't know for a long time that iPhones could be cloned. So here's the point of that: my accounts were being hacked. People were going in and changing my verification email address and phone number so that when I go to sign in, we don't recognize you. And I was like, help, help, help. This is my account. Well, we can't verify it's you because you don't have access to that email address and phone number. Someone would change it, or they'd also several of my email accounts were also hacked, so I couldn't get back into them. So I learned about two-step authentication, so that you go in and you have another one of your email addresses. It was like daunting, making sure that I could secure my own things so that other people could not take them over. And
Exactly.
I found out about cloning because I was only using iPhones. I found out that these hackers and gamers go get fake SIM cards and they program them to match your SIM card and your device. Like if you're on an XR or a Max Pro Max, but it really does happen. I found out from Panda Security. So they were cloning my phones, and I knew that was happening because they were sharing screenshots of me entering my password on Facebook and Twitter. And you know how the characters, you can see a letter or a
Mm-hmm.
number before it turns to a dot? They were
Mm-hmm.
screenshotting that, and you could see the location on my phone at the top. And I'm like, how can they see me entering my password unless they can see the screen of my phone? And then they were screenshotting that and sharing it on their Twitter pages. So I'm like, so they're really cloning my devices. And then Mark and
Mm-hmm.
I were in a conversation in the kitchen because he owed me $1,000 for something. And one of them said on Twitter, "Hey, Mark, how about that $1,000?" I'm like, how are they hearing our conversations?
Oh
And
wow.
so now that gets pretty eerie. So when I
Mm-hmm.
saw then that one I sent you, one of them was admitting that she
Mm-hmm.
had created a Markle Sammy 64 account, and one was trying to get the other to use it and tweet from it, and the other wouldn't. But they were admitting that they were hijacking my accounts. I'm like, wow, this is a lot of bravado for these little nut jobs to be out there admitting and going back and forth that they're out there jointly hacking my accounts
Exactly. And
and
Samantha,
creating fake accounts.
so I usually used to post about Boozy. I started covering you like a week ago since you entered into the space and then we talked. Now I'm noticing so many Sussex squads, the sugars are coming to my feed and then attacking every day. Whatever I post, there's one Sussex squad. And I can see they're trying to silence you. Because if you come out and present your evidence, which I have seen, and I think it's very credible, I think you're speaking the truth, and I believe you 100%. Somebody's narrative, the house of cards is gonna fall completely. So I
Well,
totally understand where you're coming from. Hmm.
and you're talking about the same people who have been attacking and harassing now Princess Catherine and Prince William and Charlotte. They're attacking their children. It's like, what kind of psychopaths attack people's children? They're trolls. They troll everybody who goes against their narrative and their dream, whatever that is, because they don't want to accept that that fairy tale failed. And it's really sad that they're lashing out at people instead of saying, maybe I believed in something here and it didn't quite work out, but I don't have to base my whole life and my day and my mental well being on the existence or the survival of that fairy tale. They are still hanging on and they are pissed that it didn't work out. And so it's really sad because it shows that, wow, they must be really sad and miserable in their own lives that this is all they've got. And they're
Hmm.
just angry that it's not driving. It's sad.
Yeah,
I don't know.
exactly.
I don't know. I think to be fair, on both sides with the kids. I mean, you got people going after the kids on both sides with the moon bump and all this stuff. I'm not going to say if I believe it or not. I'm just saying when one door opens to go after kids in any form or manner, even if it's not personally directly attacking the child, just maybe how the legitimate of the child is. I mean, it kind of makes it feel like the other side's door is open too for them. So I think leave the kids out of it completely when it comes
Well, I
to.
mean, no, you're totally right, but I think the moon bump whole thing doesn't go after the kids, although it's indirectly related. I think that brings into question, I think people, even gynecologists around the world, were like looking at this going, you can't squat in
For sure.
heels to your knees at 8 months, and there is a pillow slipping under that dress. What's up with that? Now, some of us could say, okay, maybe out in public she wanted to protect the baby and put a pillow there because if she didn't want, like, maybe it was a protective mechanism, whatever it was. People were pointing out that this is not consistent with normal pregnancy. These things aren't jiving, and so I don't think, though, questioning those things would make fun of Archie or the kids. And I think people with functioning frontal lobes have a right to question visible inconsistencies. But I think what was going on with these other trolls, the Sussex Squad trolls, were literally attacking the kids, calling Charlotte fat, calling these children filthy names. That's different
Well,
than
that
pointing
goes
out a
again.
need.
That goes on both sides. I've seen it from both sides. I mean, because I wasn't into it as much as a lot of the people are. I mean, I do have my questions too. I've been pregnant 3 times, carried full term. There is no way I was squatting like she did, especially in stilettos, and I love stilettos.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I have questions too, and but some people get pretty raunchy with it.
I think people are emotionally involved because of
True.
because of the mystery, because of the heavy PR propaganda about the pregnancy thing. It's like you're wanting PRs out there pushing this pregnancy thing, but then you're not sharing photos of the kids' faces. You're not, these other things don't jive. So then why, as a public, are you hitting us over the head with this? And
Mhm.
then why don't we have a right to question it? I think especially in Great Britain, the public got so involved because it is their tradition to be involved with royal children, with christenings. The children are presented to the public. Taxpayers pay for their well-being and all of their events and all of their. So the British public naturally have a right to feel more invested and emotional
True.
about those inconsistencies, maybe, than we do as Americans. I don't know.
Exactly, and there's some smoke there, so people are trying to find out what's going on because I posted that I'll have Samantha on the space, and the first question was the moon bump. I'm like, again? So the
Well, I
same
mean, it's a
question.
hot topic with everybody because of the mysterious of it all, because of the certainty, because of like photos, presentations. I mean, especially that one where she went bending down with a dog and it popped. I mean, yeah, that leaves us all with questions.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I mean,
Go.
I don't know who did it, but there were also a lot of photographs out there of her flat, one day before having a huge stomach at another event,
Yeah.
or being big in the morning and flat by the end of the day on the same day. So people were like, "What?" And
Yeah, and then you got people like me that see the birth announcements and you're like, wait, a doctor didn't sign it. Where's the doctor? Where's the signature from the medical staff witnessing? Like, I mean, that does leave a big question.
well, that's
Uh,
an innocent, yeah, that's an innocent thing. So I mean, my attitude on it was, people who have nothing to hide nothing, and something like that's innocent. Just show the birth certificate. Why all the mystery? And you would think, like, remember when Demi Moore came out on Vogue magazine with her pregnant belly, and she was all like, it was
Oh
beautiful.
yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
so,
That was
so
really
I thought,
beautiful.
yeah, so I thought, why be afraid to show it? And then we heard that a royal physician was not allowed to examine her belly. Like, if I don't know, most women, I think, if they were pregnant with a royal child, they'd be like, "Oh, bring it on. Of course I want the royal doctor examining my belly. I'm in the best of care and I want that announcement out there." Like, it seems par for the course that you wouldn't want to hide
It,
anything,
it,
but
it
that's not.
also seemed it also seems kind of weird because she likes putting stuff out there. I mean, like she liked blogging about everything. She liked the attention. Like so when she was like, you don't hear stories about when I first felt the baby move.
Right.
Or when Harry first felt the baby move. You don't hear stories of, oh, when her belly got to this big and we could see notable differences and changes or mood swings or cravings or anything. You don't hear none of that.
Yeah, and
Uh,
as Harry even talked about his Todger in the spare, but he never mentioned the baby and her stomach and watching the baby develop. It was some of the it's like why if that's like the most magic moment in life is childbirth, why wouldn't you talk about that in spare? What like why? You
Or
know,
complain about heartburn or whatever. I mean, we expecting moms, we love bragging about our condition and how
yeah.
far along we are and everything. And we didn't get that. And I don't know. It's just different and leaves
mhm.
questioning and leaves people doubting and wondering why.
But I mean,
Um,
I guess it's just like anyone, you guys. It's like when things out there don't make sense, it's like normal to question things. And that's the way we arrive at an understanding, I guess. It's the only way to make sense of the world.
exactly. Lena, go ahead. Go ahead, Lena. Go ahead.
So I think the pregnancy questions, whether they're true or false, I no skin in this game, but I think I think the attitude of or the perception of Americans, particularly Americans, is so vastly different from the perception of members of the Commonwealth who, like, the line of succession means something to us. Like it's important. And so like for like just a regular woman who is having a child, I really couldn't, give two tosses whether it's um a surrogate or whatever. Like, I think if that's how you can are able to have a child, that's fantastic, and congratulations science for allowing that. But we're not talking about like modern. We're not talking about modern times. We're talking about a, an ancient institution that has these rules in place for a reason, and I think it's as much as I think the royals deserve privacy and the right to do whatever they really want. To be fair, when it comes to monarchy, which like the question with if they're going to the coronation or whatever, it's actually not about them. It's about the larger institution of a monarchy that is the head of state for multiple countries. And if you're not going to have people register your birth, if you're a royal, then like, you kind of you're asking for those questions. And think the I don't think people in America really understand the gravity as to why people in the Commonwealth or England or whatever really
So
want
it's
this answer
tradition
question
and
to be answered.
it's history and it's
Yeah.
going on with that. But at the same time, like y'all don't care. Like if it because they're playing a royal part, you want them to make sure that if they're going to be vested fully in it, that they legitimate is basically.
Well, yeah, like if you want to be if you don't want to be a part of the system, that's no, I don't care. But if that's what if you want to take up the mantle of being in that line of succession or the whatever, then like it's not just yourself and your partner and your family who you have to answer to. It is the wider people that the monarchy um, has a relationship with. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
I get what you're saying,
I
but I can ask you a question.
Yeah,
So
sure.
would this only matter to you if
Mm-hmm.
it was because it's the heirs and the princess well King Charles' sons and his grandkids? I mean, say it was
Yes.
somebody else and they're stated as I mean they get knighted as a duke or an earl or whatever it is y'all do over there. No offense. I don't mean to come off rude about it. But like, would it matter in their case or just because it's direct to heir?
Well, I think it matters. Well, if you actually look at inheritance laws in so I'm Australian, but if you look at inheritance laws in Australia and UK, there is it's slightly archaic, but I can understand why it happens. There is inheritance laws that are important. So people can't have multiple children to it all boils down to money and titles. If you are able to have multiple children, then that is like an incentive to people to have multiple children from different places to assume this wealth.
So basically you're saying they're not working royals, but they want the titles for the kids. You just want the kids to be legitimized and proven, and y'all be quiet about it. Is basically
like if like I don't pretty much like if
okay.
my perspective my perspective is coming at it from looking from like as a citizen of a country that has the king as the head of state.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to be in the line of succession, there are things you have to prove to be in that line of succession. Like, I don't care who you are, but you have to legitimize that because you're in charge of our country.
Yeah, the institution is more important than special privileges for few. So is that your point you're coming at? Okay, cool. Samantha,
Does that
what
make
are
sense?
you?
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. No, I understood your point. Samantha, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
No. She said she was asking about Meghan Markle shouldn't have special privileges and stuff like that. They should be able to, the royals should be able to check whether the kid or whatever is legitimate, or all the checks that go through, they have to go
Right.
through. Yeah. So what are
Right.
your
Well,
thoughts on that?
yeah, I mean,
Hmm.
I agree
Hmm.
that. I mean, for something that conveys such incredible security, financial benefits, and status, so certainly there should be qualifications and proof. Like, again, in my opinion, people with nothing to hide nothing. It's really not hard to show a DNA test. You get a sample of hair. And that's non invasive. There are a lot of ways to say, hey, this is what it is. Here's this proof, or not. And when it's
Well,
or
I
not,
don't think that will help in this case because there's questions of did she
Nika,
carry them?
let her complete, and then you can speak. Go ahead, Samantha. What were you saying?
okay. So I was
Hmm.
just saying, I mean, I think the royal family have a right to ask that because there's so much involved with title conveyance, and it's not just a matter of name, it's a matter of inheritance and being in the line of succession. And under British law, that certain things have to be in place. Like, for example, a surrogate can't be involved, for example. So I think just to eradicate any question that is unduly stigmatizing to the children, just provide the proof and get it over with. If it's so honest and above board, put the receipts out there. And I think the mystery stigmatizes the children more than anything, and the royals have a right to know.
Exactly, because of the benefits about the tradition, the whole thing that comes with it. They shouldn't be afforded, special privileges. I totally
Well,
understand.
and again, some people say, well, don't punish the children. It's not punishing the children for not giving them entitlements that they might not be entitled to under the law. It's not punishment. There's no reason to create a stigma or a mystery. Just put the qualifications in place or don't. And whatever that looks like in terms of entitlements, it is what it is. You have to show certain qualifications to get a driver's license. You have to show certain qualifications to open a bank account. You should have to show qualifications to have everything that being in the line of succession under British law yields. It's
Yes,
just it's
exactly. Yeah, there shouldn't be special privileges for anyone. It's a long tradition, and whatever they need to check, they should be able to. Nika, go ahead, complete your thought. Go ahead.
I just think it's weird because it's like I don't think simple DNA is going to handle it because she's got to prove she's carried it at this point to the people, I guess. Because I mean, even if you do a DNA test, I mean, they could have used an egg, but then again, wasn't there something about your dad or something paid for like a hysterectomy or something? Like, is that true? Is that
I,
not true?
Yeah, let me set the record straight on that. I think that's a rumor and a lie. Firstly, because I would know. And if you guys saw an interview with P. Dina, he was very forthcoming about the frozen eggs. He knew about that when she was with Trevor. And in our minds as a family, it wasn't a big deal. If you're a celebrity and you want to preserve your eggs and you want to, have a surrogate or do whatever at a later point in life, then great, because you have some flexibility there for whatever reasons. And if life throws you a curveball and you can't have kids, or if you're too busy and you want to have a surrogate and you can afford it, cool. Children are a miracle however they come into the world. So when we spoke about it, we spoke about it innocently, like, yeah, cool on her. And again, getting back to the Demi Moore thing, if surrogacy was an issue, I fully expected a spread in Vogue magazine about the beauty of surrogacy. Like when I mentioned that, I was honestly saying, yeah, I know about this. My dad told me about this. And that's a beautiful thing. If someone else can carry your baby and you're too busy and you can, as a celebrity, it's cool, then wonderful. It's a gift no matter what. But for people out there to be saying that there was and assuming there was a hysterectomy involved, my father never said that. I reviewed the P. Dina interview where he talked about that. He would never say anything like that. And I believe that in our family, we wouldn't know that. That's her personal business. That is personal health. And, I've never heard about anything like that. Neither has my dad, I don't think. And if he did, he didn't tell me. But that's her personal health business. So the whole hysterectomy thing, I think, is a psycho rumor. I don't believe it. And we have never discussed anything and we wouldn't know about that. See what I'm saying? My sister and I never discussed our OBGYN visits and personal uterine issues with each other. And I doubt my sister would discuss that with our dad. It's just way too personal.
Exactly. David, you had your hand up. If you have a question, go ahead.
Oh, hi. Yeah, I just wanted to jump in. Hi, guys. Hi, Sammy.
Hello.
Hi.
I was no, it's just that from my perspective, as a British citizen, I just feel that a lot of us became kind of offended where it was easier to just go with it instead of going against the grain. So, for context, if I were to say that it's the British monarchy it runs quite
Did the
successfully for
space
many
just
hundreds of
die?
years.
Because I can't hear anyone.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear.
I can
Oh,
hear you.
I
oh,
can hear you.
hi. Oh, good.
Yes.
So basically, in a nutshell, what I'm trying to say is that the monarchy has run in a certain way for hundreds of years, like a gorgeous clock that doesn't need tinkering, because the minute you start to alter the nuts and bolts of something, it's not going to run efficiently. And when the press are reporting that Meghan and Harry feel it a violation that they have to present the child on the same steps that gave the world William and Harry, the same steps that Diana, even herself, said, it's not the best for a new mum to have to do that, but it's part and parcel of what happens. When you start to tinker with everything like this, then it all starts to fall apart. When you try to be victimized in your life of luxury and privilege, and the public adore you, they start to then think, well, why are you concealing this from us? That's the point I wanted to add to this narrative.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. Lena, I'm gonna come back to you. I have a question for Samantha. So in your lawsuit,
Sure.
Samantha, in what capacity Boozy is involved? Anything you can disclose?
I'm sorry, I only heard boozy as what? It was
Okay.
muted for a second.
Okay. In your case, in your lawsuit, Boozy has to testify as well, right? Am I correct? Can you hear
I'm
me?
not sure. Yeah, can you hear me?
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Can you hear? Okay. Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. In your
Okay.
lawsuit against
So,
your,
no,
go ahead.
yeah, I don't know that he's testifying, but I think it's really important, the evidence that Nate has come up with
Mm-hmm.
about his data being falsified, about bots being integral, and about that reportedly being behind a paywall.
Mm-hmm.
When someone's out there making up data, and their
Mm-hmm.
data is not qualified and not backed, you can't write defamatory articles about someone like BuzzFeed did using that data because the data has no merit. And if that's
Mm-hmm.
what you're using to back a defamatory statement, you totally lose. It's not real. So I
Exactly.
think he has to be
Yeah.
held accountable. No, he has to be held accountable for skewing data and falsifying numbers with no qualification. And that's come up in so many pieces of evidence that Nate has. I mean, I think it's a crime. I don't think he has any business manipulating social media or harassing people using this fake claim of being, he's a self-proclaimed expert and has nothing in his history that backs
Mhm.
that he's an expert. That's also been
Exactly.
revealed.
And
So for
he
net,
has
so for well,
one second.
no
So
Netflix.
he has tweeted about you multiple times and called you a troll, and then he repeated those same statements against you in the Netflix documentary as well.
Right.
So yes, so yeah, I totally understand.
So
Yeah.
well, let me point out something else for Ellie Hall to say. When I announced it, I was never called my sister's biggest troll until I announced my lawsuit.